You know, when Ian spoke at the outset of the hour, and he talked about the Boston student who's been imprisoned for some things that he put on a Facebook page, it actually brought back for me a memory of my first embrace of the First Amendment. Pink Floyd released The Wall in my senior year of high school. The band was reluctant to tour in support of the double album, but was obligated to do a certain number of dates in honor of their record deal. So they put on spectacular performances only in New York, only in Los Angeles. I got to see one of the programs with my high school girlfriend as a date, and we were the envy of our friends. I was also the editor at that time of my high school newspaper. It was called The Chatterbucks. And so when I came home from the concert, I decided that I would write a review of the double album, The Wall. I wrote at the time, in just about every song on the album, there is reference to the wall. Just what is the wall? What does the wall symbolize? Possibly it is a prison wall or a wall around a person seeking isolation. When you try to see the point of the music, you are asking for trouble because there just isn't any point. Not exactly a Jimmy Breslin in the making, not even a Mike Royko, and certainly not a Cameron Crowe. When the newspaper came out, I was summoned to the principal's office. He told me that he was disappointed that I had written the review, and he requested of me a retraction. Not because of anything in particular that I'd written, but because I had addressed the subject at all. See, the principal told me that when he often found graffiti in guests, the graffiti would include references to smoking pot, and there was often something said about this Mr. Floyd, which is why he wanted me to do a follow-up and be critical of the music. I was not yet 18. I was only superficially familiar with the First Amendment. I doubt I could have defined censorship or prior restraint, but I knew enough to know that something he was asking of me just wasn't right. I weighed his request, and I didn't do it. More than 30 years later, like all of you, I now spend all of my time talking about such dilemmas, speaking my mind, and rendering judgments about matters of public controversy. Only now I do so with a profound appreciation for the source of our freedom. And Michael Harrison has given me the honor of delivering a State of the First Amendment and also the challenge of doing so in only 10 to 15 minutes. I thought that was impossible, and then I remembered a different task: establishing a government framework for the weighty subjects of religion, of speech, of assembly, of petition, doing it in just 45 words and in a manner that would be relevant for 222 years and counting. That's exactly what was accomplished in 1791 when the First Amendment and the entire Bill of Rights was adopted. Think about the words. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or of the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. So superficially simple and yet so prescient. A guidepost in under 50 words. Written 2 centuries before the advent of the internet and yet able to determine the rights of such disparate actors as the distributor of violent video games and the high school student who held the sign which read, "Bong hits for Jesus." Salman Rushdie once said, "Free speech is the whole thing, the whole ball game. Free speech is life itself." And so it is. Determining how our children are educated and sometimes what they'll be permitted to wear to class. What's displayed in the town square at Christmas. Who gets to march and where. Access to books and the burning of a flag. Words that incite violence and how to regulate indecency. If campaign contributions are the same as spoken speech, and whether prayer can precede a public meeting. If a pastor can burn a Quran, and soon, I'm sure, whether you can distribute an image captured by a camera on your eyewear. The list is literally endless. What's the state of the First Amendment? In a word, resilient, owing itself to the genius of a constitutionally protected right to free speech. When the dust settles on the government's investigation to prosecute leaks, or Connecticut's effort to preclude distribution of Sandy Hook photos, when the last of those racist posts that were appended to an online Cheerios commercial featuring a biracial couple has been taken down, the First Amendment will still be standing, which is good news for us and even better news for our country. While none of us works for the government, what we do is often viewed as a logical extension of those freedoms. I think with the privilege our microphones afford comes a certain responsibility to do our part to create a marketplace of ideas worthy of those framers. But our marketplace is like any other, which means it doesn't guarantee good ideas any more than a marketplace of products guarantees worthy goods. We facilitate the exchange of both the good and the bad. Legendary First Amendment lawyer Floyd Abrams said it this way. He said, "I think that it's important for people to understand that whether a good guy or a bad guy wins a case is less important than what the law is that the case results in." Oftentimes, we base our own sensibilities, we base our own desire for an outcome on our own sensibilities. I would venture to say that many of us were not pleased when the Supreme Court said that Westboro Baptist could be a presence at the funeral of Matthew Snyder, or that the Stolen Valor Act was unconstitutional where it was used to prosecute Xavier Alvarez, who fraudulently claimed to be the recipient of a Medal of Honor. Some of us have had more personal experiences. I will never forget when in the mid-1990s I was in private legal practice and representing a large chapter of the Fraternal Order of Police. There was a rock band at the time. They called themselves a crude derivation of the word crucifix. Fix was replaced with another F word. They used a real police officer's photograph as an album cover, the contents of which praised the killing of police officers. The song lyrics on some of those titles included "Cops for Fertilizer," "Pigs in a Blanket." I sued the rock band. We were successful at the trial court level. We received a $2.2 million judgment. We then lost it on appeal. I'm still angry about the outcome. But intellectually, I get it, even if I don't like it. And that's the point. When it comes to the First Amendment, it's sometimes difficult, but nevertheless important, not to root for an outcome based on the combatants alone. That's what Floyd Abrams was saying. The First Amendment deserves consistency from all of us, because there will be a tomorrow when the standards that we adopt today will apply to a new set of actors. It's that consistency that will preserve the First Amendment. I began by telling you a story about a concert that I attended many, many years ago, my first embrace of the First Amendment after watching Pink Floyd perform. Well, to come full circle, a couple of years ago, Pink Floyd's Roger Waters appeared a couple of blocks from here at Madison Square Garden. This time he was performing Dark Side of the Moon in its entirety. Now with a bigger waistline, a lot less hair, and much better seats. I attended the show. In fact, I was in the front row, stage right. I objected that night when he departed from the songs and delivered a speech about habeas corpus for prisoners at Gitmo. We were located less than 2 miles away from where the planes hit and killed 3,000 Americans on September 11, and emotions were still raw. So I stood up and I shouted my objection from my $400 seat. If you don't believe me, Google Smerconish, if you can spell it, and Waters, and you can watch the exchange. "Go visit Ground Zero," I yelled, exercising my free speech. Well, he did likewise. For the rest of the program, he never played from my side of the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, the First Amendment doesn't guarantee an airing of all points of view. That's our job. But it does provide us with the necessary framework. Thanks so much for your attention.